Iris inside out. So you came on here before in sort of like your previous company, Marva, and you've since exited that and you're building something new. Can you tell us like about the exit you had and how that all worked out and came into place?
Sure. So just as a bit of context, the last company I built was a SaaS company. We built a customer support platform specifically working with companies that have large online communities. So we had a lot of clients in the crypto space, some in the gaming space, some in the AI space. So we had been running that company for about 2.5, 3 years. We were at a stage where it was growing, it was profitable. However, we also felt we hit a bit of a ceiling in terms of, okay, this company still has potential and can still grow further. However, we're not quite sure that this has this has VC skill potential. So we would rather, move on and do something else. And yeah, managed to sell that at the beginning of this year to a firm called Nusa Labs. And what they do is they buy and operate software companies. So they're still running the company and they are aiming to grow it and increase the revenues. And obviously myself and my co-founders helped them during the transition. But now they are fully running it, and I'm working on a new business.
And with the exit as well, so obviously we've been working hard for like several years to get it to that point. How did it feel when you finally got that over the line and it's like, okay, now this is done and it's a new chapter to begin?
I think with what any founder would probably say, it's mixed feelings. On the one end, I was really happy with the fact that the company is still, living on, and because I think it's always a bit sad if you build something and then you have to shut it down or something. I'm really glad that it's still, living on. However, at the same time, it's a bit of mixed feelings because going in, obviously, we had huge ambitions that we weren't able to like totally fulfill in that business.
And what did you do after you took a bit of a break, right?
Traveled for a couple of months, sort of was thinking about what to do next. Pretty quickly realized, okay, I really want to start another company in general because I like building things, but also looking at the market at the moment. There's just so many opportunities, so many things are changing. So I think this is a really good time to build. I knew I wanted to build something again. And then it was just a matter of finding the right people to build with and finding the right problems and ideas to work on.
And then like when you're getting from like obviously working really hard to get it started off the ground to then having that rest time, like were you able to like switch off and relax, or was it straight away thinking about, as you said, that next idea?
No, I was able to switch off for a little bit, but it's probably not something that I could do for a long time because you do get bored and just want to jump back in.
And you said like you found a co-founder, right, as well. How did you find a co-founder?
Yeah, so when I decided that, okay, I want to build something new, I knew pretty quickly that my preference is to work with one or two co-founders, just because, it's a personal preference, but I think, building a startup, it's so difficult, both in terms of it's a lot of work. So if you have multiple people, you can just do more, but also mentally, you're going to have good days, bad days. And I think being in there together with someone is just hugely beneficial, not just for the productivity and what you're building, but also just for your own sort of mental health, at least for me. I started looking for people to work with, tapped into like several networks, of course, my personal network, but then ultimately ended up finding Noam, who I'm currently working with through the YC co-founder matching platform. And generally just as a tip, I guess, for people listening or looking for co-founders, definitely would recommend it because aside from Noam, I also met a lot of other, really amazing, great people through the platform. And the reason that I ended up working with Noam and not necessarily with the other people I met, they were also like, some really great profiles. But it's always about, okay, what are you interested in? Aside from compatibility, what do you want to work on? Having similar interests.
And you said as well you kept a good relationship with your previous co-founders as well, right? And it's just different life stages. So it wasn't like there was a big breakup or anything like that. It's just working out the next chapter and how that goes as well. But when you look at, say, like when you were looking for your co-founders to your previous company to having built a company for several years, then looking again, was there anything you looked for different, or you were looking for in your new co-founder that maybe you didn't place much importance on before?
So when I started my previous company, that was the first time I had already worked in early stage startups and been a first employee, so kind of knew the startup journey, but it was the first time being a founder. And at that time, I actually joined Antler. So in some sense, they do prepare you quite a lot in terms of there's a lot of content and workshops about these are all the things that you should be mindful of when looking for a co-founder. Ask your co-founder these 50 questions. So I think I had a bit more context than someone perhaps just going in blank. So that really helped at the time. So even though I didn't find my co-founders through Endler, I would say that when I was looking the last time, already I was quite, mindful, conscious of in terms of like these are the things that are important to me. Some things are still very similar. So the obvious ones like complementary skills. What do you want to work on? Also like some practical elements like what's your personal runway like? Do you need to raise money right away, or can you work on this thing for 6 to 12 months, even if we don't raise money like right away? I would say one of the things that really appealed to me about Noam and that I wasn't thinking maybe so much about the last time that I was building is at that time I was thinking more about complementary skills in terms of hard skills. Okay, I've done marketing, I've done BD, and I'm not a developer, so I want to work with a developer. This is still important. But I was thinking now also a bit more about complementary soft skills or like personalities in a sense of, I would say like for myself, I am very pragmatic and I'm always thinking, okay, how do I get from 0 to 1? What can we do today to get to hit our next sort of milestone, which is important because you need to keep things moving. However, what I really like about Noam is that he has more of a visionary style. And the first time we met, he immediately led with, this is what I want the future to look like in 5 to 10 years. And the first time I met him, I didn't understand all of his ideas. But that actually was appealing to me because I think it's a good balance where I can think more about the sort of practical day-to-day, whereas now I'll make sure that we don't lose sight of the big vision.
And through the previous startups, as well, obviously, you said about complementary skill sets, but you probably learned quite a lot through that previous startup too. And what is it that like today you think like actually is really the strengths you can take away and the learnings you can take away from the first startup that you maybe have more confidence in yourself in certain skills than you had before?
Yeah, sure. In terms of not necessarily skills, but just learnings in general and things that I would do a little bit differently this time. I think one of the things, and I mentioned it to you just before we're recording, is that, as a second-time founder, you're very harsh on yourself and your own ideas, and you wouldn't like delude yourself with, okay, there's a bit of traction, let's just keep trying for a bit longer, and you're kind of just hoping this thing will work out. And of course, if you try longer, you can probably get some traction, but it's probably not going to be good enough. So in the end, you've just wasted that time, those weeks or months or maybe years, depending on how long you keep going. So also now that, in the current company, so we've been working on this for a couple of months. It's still pretty fresh, but we've already been experimenting with 4 products. Of course, all of those products are somewhat related. It's not totally like unrelated random products, but we're just testing things and very quickly making that decision. Okay, this is nice. People kind of like it, but it's probably not good enough.
And what kind of area are you testing in right now? So like, what are some of these experiments you've tried?
Yeah, so in terms of what we're building now, so our company is called Sky Valley and our product is called Ziffer. And what we're building is infrastructure for dynamic software. And what we mean by that is software that can adapt as the user is interacting with it. So that's quite different from how software behaves today, because most software today, a developer codes it, you deploy it. Then if you want to make changes, you kind of go through that same cycle again. Of course, now there's AI, so you can code a lot more quickly, but you still always go through that same cycle. Whereas what we're thinking is that in the future, that will no longer be necessary because some software can adapt at runtime as users are interacting with it. And we've been seeing a couple of small examples. It's a pretty new area. We've been seeing a couple of small examples from some of the big AI labs and Google. So for example, Anthropic, a month or so ago, they released a demo called Imagine with Claude. And how it worked is that you would write a prompt like you're used to when you're interacting with AI. That would spin up a page. But then what would happen is if you click a button on the page, a new element would appear. And new elements would keep appearing just based on your interactions with the page without you explicitly prompting for that change. And also Google last week, actually, they came out with a new research paper about beyond like text, AI chatbots and AI interactions beyond text. Because today, most interactions when we talk to an AI chatbot, the result is text. And it doesn't always make sense. If you want to explain like a complicated concept, maybe it's better to create a web page and show diagrams. And so we're thinking these types of experiences are going to be much more common in the future, where software just gets created on the fly, dynamically, as and when the user needs it. So that's the sort of the longer term vision that we're working towards. And then in terms of the short term products that or the smaller experiments and products that we've been working on today, so they're all sort of related to one core concept, which is around storing and understanding intent. Because our belief is that if we want to create this dynamic software future, the software cannot just change in any direction. There have to be some guardrails and principles, and it has to follow the developers or creators' intent. So we have to understand what was the developer trying to achieve when they were trying to build this software, and how do we capture that intent. So that's the first building block that we're working towards. And you can think about, for example, storing prompts and conversations that you have when you are building something with Claude Code or Codex. So that's actually something that we're working on today. We've already sort of built that. So okay, how can we store all of those interactions, make some sense out of it, so that we understand the full context of what you were building when you were building it, and not just have access to the static code, which is more like the outcome.
You mentioned like Google and Anthropic there and people like that as well. And as you're kind of building up this future, is this something you're building collaboratively with these other organizations? How do you would you fit into the tech stack for like a future developer?
Yeah, so where we see the value and where we're building is we want to become the new system of record. So the place where software creators would store their work, and the work can be the code, but also, as I mentioned, the intent. So these conversations, these prompts, like what they were trying to build when they were building this piece of software. We don't necessarily need to build everything ourselves. So there's already a few companies out there. For example, there's a company called Teije with a Y, who's doing like Gen UI APIs. And for example, we can definitely collaborate with companies like them. And the other big labs might also be releasing some APIs that will make it easier to integrate those types of experiences within software. And again, there's no point or no need for us to compete with that. But we still think, okay, so there's still going to be a need to have this system of record and this place where you store your work, where you collaborate on your work. That will have to be integrated. So you would need both the code and the intent, but we also have to be aware of what's happening as the application is running. So we have to make sure that we can combine both those elements.
Hello. I hope you're enjoying the show so far. I'm Amardeep Parmar, co-founder of BayHQ and the host of this show. For those of you who don't know, BayHQ is the community for high growth Asian heritage founders and investors in the UK. Over 7,500 people have attended our events, 200 people have been through our impact programs, and obviously there's been over 250 episodes of this podcast. If you want to join us and take part in the programs and come to the events, go to bayhq.com/join. We also just released our first ever book called Startups for Outsiders, which you can get on Amazon now, and the link is in the bio. Hope to see you soon at our event. Hope you enjoy the rest of the episode. I think like people don't obviously realize this sometimes. I used to be a developer myself, right, back in the day. And it was the early days of Oracle chatbots, for example. And there's a whole thing about finding that intent. So people often try to do it for that consumer side and the customer side of what's somebody talking to a chatbot, what do they want, right? But with what you're doing on the developer side, obviously, it's going to be a lot more complicated. But then also the potential value there is huge, right? And obviously it's about the 5 to 10 year vision. Like, what can you imagine seeing in that 10 years time if everything goes to plan and like you are able to achieve this?
So there's a few different use cases, and I think that's also some that we cannot imagine today. But what's the point of this is that Software is going to be a lot more personalized, and you can just spin up things on the fly as and when you need it. And this can apply to B2B software, can apply to B2C software. So let's say in B2B, you've got a dashboard of analytics. And quite often there's so much data to tap into. So instead of, why would you want to, pre-code 5 charts if you can just show the data that is relevant in the way that is relevant at that time for that specific persona? That will be possible. Also, for example, you've got CRMs. Typically, they're very complex. There's so many fields, and you don't use like 90% of it. So why do you need to look at all of these things? And it's kind of confusing. The software ideally should just adapt to you, and removing all of the unnecessary complexity. Or when you're running into an error, does it always need to go back to the developer for the bug to be resolved, or can a software heal itself while it's running? So those are some of the areas that we're thinking about. And like a lot of these things, they're not necessarily going to be visible to users. At least the way that I'm thinking about it is more like, for example, if you think about Google, like if you're searching for something, let's say you're Googling for like restaurant recommendations and you're in London, you're going to see results that are in London, and that just makes sense. And you don't necessarily think about that it's like magical. It just makes sense. It's relevant. It's contextual. And software is going to be like that too. But today it's too expensive for most companies to make the experience so personalized for every single user, for every single use case, edge case. It just doesn't make sense if you have to code that into like a static system.
And then as you're building this out, right, as well, so you said you're going for that experimental approach right now. Then let's say you're doing the different experiments, is then to build on top of that? Or how do you kind of see the roadmap coming to your eventual goal? Is it doing different experiments, then kind of doubling down on an experiment going well? Or is it these kind of experiments aren't necessarily what's going to be the final product?
So we know, for example, the storing intent is going to be crucial regardless. So we're doing that. And then we're just seeing, okay, what can we do with that product today? Which is not, that product doesn't fulfill our entire vision. It's just like a small part. But is this product already useful for a small group of people? For example, in our case, we've also been building a community of vibe coders. Can they use that product today for some of the vibe coding that they're doing? Even though that has nothing to do with dynamic software necessarily.
And obviously, because you had the community platform before, right? So you're going to be pretty good at growing a community and like being able to.
Yeah, I'm very bullish on community. Even though I mentioned that previous company wasn't maybe not necessarily VC skill, I am still very excited about communities, building communities. The first thing I did when I started this new company, even before sort of starting to build product, is reaching out to people in the space and having a lot of conversations. And once I felt, okay, now I've had enough one-to-one conversations that I can start a community, we started. It was just sort of a simple WhatsApp group. So also if anyone watching is interested into vibe coding, to reach out to me. It's been a really great group actually, in terms of people supporting each other, asking each other for advice on their projects. And especially in the community is important anyway, but especially in this early stage, I really like it, because when we have new ideas or want to get some feedback, I'm just very quick. I just message the WhatsApp and immediately I get that feedback. Okay, maybe I should explore this more, maybe not.
And then you were saying earlier as well how you think about funding differently this time compared to last time too. How do you think about that funding element of building this company?
Yeah, so for us, we definitely need to raise, because what we want to build is going to be quite like resource intensive. But we only want to raise once we feel okay, we've got a bit of traction, because otherwise we might get into this trap where we're raising based on a specific pitch and pitching a specific product. And then if we want to, experiment more, we can still do that, of course, after we raise, but it's different. If you already sort of committed to your investors or told your investors that this is what you're going to do, even if they're totally fine with the founders changing course, like from like mentally, it feels different if you already taken money versus if you're still bootstrapped.
And in terms of geographics as well, so both you and your founder are both based in London, right? How do you think about how you're going to expand this globally, or is it going to be very UK focused to begin with?
So even like now for our vibe coding community, it's a little bit more London heavy just because we're here, but already it's global. And yeah, not a surprise. It's mostly like US and then London. And yeah, in terms of this company, for sure, longer term, probably the US is going to be the biggest market.
And obviously, like I think as we're recording this right now, the budget is coming out, and there's been a lot of talk at the moment about like UK as a place to build, and obviously you built your previous company here as well. What is it about the UK or London that keeps you building here?
I think a few things. There is a lot of good talent here in terms of, yeah, actually in every area of every part of the stack. And then also, if you've been in a certain place for a couple of years, you've built you've built a strong network, and that is actually one of the things that kept me here, both from a sort of personal point of view, but also obviously from a business point of view. Like now, if I want some feedback, help, if I want to raise, I can just reach out to all of the investors that I've spoken with before. So it's just so much faster.
And yeah, as you look to grow this now, so have you, at the moment, is it the two of you, or are you starting to hire, or how are you thinking about growing that team too? Because obviously with AI experts, I'm guessing you're kind of making use of agentic AI and things like that too. So how are you thinking about how you're going to hire and grow?
I think like as any startup, everyone now has the ambition to build $1 billion company with a team that's as small as possible. So yeah, no difference for us. So at the moment, it's just myself and my co-founder. Given the AI, given the possibilities of AI and the fact that we're also working with a lot of vibe coders, I personally also got really into it. So these days, I'm spending more than 50% of my time actually building. Even though before this, I've never been a developer or never, yeah. The most I've done is like built Webflow sites and like automations, but I never really built, web apps or mobile apps. And now I am, so spending a lot of time on that. But we do, once we start raising, we do of course need to hire people, more engineers, community marketing, but also probably our first hire is going to be a designer, because I think that design is really important. It can be a strong differentiator, especially at this time where anyone can build anything super quickly. Like it's really important to us.
And I guess on that side as well, so obviously having built communities before, and like, how are you thinking about building that moat up? You said you've got the community of vibe coders that gives you direct access to people. How do you think about how you're going to protect this, as so many people are exploring this space right now? Like, what things are you doing to kind of keep that traction and that momentum?
Yeah, I think with community, you have to be very personal. You have to be helpful. Like you cannot start a community thinking about, oh, I'm just going to push my product or promote my product. And it sounds obvious, but I'm still seeing there's a lot, like people starting Discord servers and it just writing product updates, and people just aren't that interested in it. The primary goal of the community should be people getting access to resources, knowledge, helping each other. And then, of course, you can talk about your product from time to time. And also, but yeah, one of the metrics that I always have for really good communities is that people build relationships between each other. Okay, they find co-founders, or they find clients. That's what makes communities really sticky and good.
Yeah, it's one of the things that we're trying to work on our transition as well, because I'm kind of the face of the community at the moment, right? But the whole point of the community is it shouldn't be a cult. It's not about talking to me, it's about talking to each other, as you said. And now that's starting to happen more. So I'm trying to slowly, like, the more I kind of disappear a bit, it means that hopefully then people start helping each other. And then hopefully I can just sit on the beach and not have to do anything anymore. That's the aim, right? Well, I can just do the bits that I like to do rather than having to like do all the communication side. And let's say like what we're going to do now. So you've been on the podcast before, but if we get you in again in say 200 episodes time, which is about 2 years time, we're going to jazz up this area a bit. So we're going to have a rug, we're going to have like a TV up here, and then we'll play this back in 2 years time when you come on again, about like, where do you hope that in 2 years time you can say like, this is our biggest achievement so far?
I would want to be in a stage where we've got serious skill ups and also enterprises use our infrastructure to build these dynamic experiences.
So we'll play that back when you come back on again, and then see, hopefully you've been able to achieve that, and you can sit here and be like, yeah, we did that. So before we go to quick fire questions as well now, also just about like your growth, and like it sounds like this kind of a new chapter has been really exciting for you as well. Like, what are you enjoying most about this new startup?
I would say the fact that I got so into vibe coding, and yeah, that's been really life-changing, because I think every commercial founder has had that frustration in the past. You have so many ideas, but you can't really execute on all your ideas because you've only got, if you're lucky, you've got a technical co-founder, but the technical co-founder can't work fast enough to make all your ideas happen. And now you can do a lot of that yourself.
And you also, I think it was before we started recording, said about how one of the things with your co-founders are, because they've also previously started a company, they understand the hard parts and the struggles in the journey too. And like, what keeps you going? What keeps you, when you know how difficult things can be, when things can go wrong, what kind of motivates you to keep going and keep pushing new frontiers?
It's a few things. I would say for this specific company, to me, the fact that this future of dynamic adaptive software, it's inevitable. So I know it's going to happen. And I feel I have the chance now to be like a core part of that. If I give up, it's going to happen anyway. And I will always wonder, oh, why didn't I do it?
Awesome. So we're going to go to quick fire questions now. So you've obviously been on it before, so I think you know the drill. So first one is, who are 3 Asians in Britain you think are doing amazing work right now and you'd love to shout them out?
Yeah, so I'm gonna mention some founders who just recently started new projects. So hopefully some new companies to check out. So one is my friend Alex. So she recently launched a company called Hula, which aims to bring new parents, new moms together. So it's AI and tech enabled.
Alex Ashford?
Yes,
Yeah.
but also very focused on real life community. And that's actually also an area that I'm quite bullish about. Before I started this company, I was thinking about do I want to do something, because I'm really passionate about community. Do I want to do something in the physical community space? I ended up not doing that, but I still think that's a really interesting space. Secondly, YU and Z, who recently started a rec tech company called Proximity. So they're a very strong team from a fintech and technology development background, and they recently got into YC as well in the latest batch. So check them out. And then lastly, I'd mention my friend Spirit, who is building something in stealth in the cybersecurity and visibility in the AI space.
Awesome. So check them all out. And if people want to find more about you and what you're building now.
Yeah, so you can check out our website, that is getdiffer.com.
And people want to follow you, where's the best platform for you?
Yeah, LinkedIn or X. So that's on my name, Iris Teije, and I'm sure we'll put the links in the description.
And if anybody is listening now who could potentially help you, what could they reach out and help you about?
I would say two areas. One, if you're really into vibe coding and want to join our community, give me a shout. Or two, if you are like interested or have any specific opinions or insights around the dynamics of our future, also would love to chat.
So thanks so much for coming on today again. Have you got any final words?
Nothing in mind yet.
Okay.